things like that.
Yet, when this is home for a family, can they think of animals or anything?
What's it like to live in a tent like this with a baby?
Oh, it is very, very cold, sir. Very hard, and the rain coming down, so the winter time, very bad colds and sickness, and when we move around, so it is very hard upon us. When I come to a place, we all damp, we're very hard in it, so lie upon having straw in, and there's no fire sometimes. Get a
All
bit of food
this
ready.
against the constant threat of being moved on or arrested. Guards and magistrates take stern views of most things the Tinkers do, and so they must. But if the man of the caravan goes to jail, what can his wife do to feed her children? Go begging, of course. What else could she do? And risk going to jail herself. Leaving her children to fend for themselves in a tent or a caravan. Of course, the local authority would look after them, if anyone in the camp knew how to ask for help. But would the local authority give the children back to parents who've both been in jail, and have no house, no job, no money? Perhaps they would, but 9 times out of 10 the travellers prefer not to risk it, and try to look after their own. Of course, there's charity, and kindness, and compassion. Even a loaf of bread. And sometimes the guards themselves are friends to the Tinkers, instead of the enemies they might be.
That was a very nice guard that passed there a while ago, and he does not trouble us. And, but not the same in other parts of the countries. They are troubling in other parts of the countries, and I don't see what is the cause for it. That they would not give them a chance, the same as they're giving us here around here.
If the neighbourhood does tolerate all this, it must be astonishingly broad-minded. Dirt, rags, broken glass, rusting iron, no one could welcome the travellers as neighbours, until they learn to be clean. But when people are as poor as this, live like this, all ambitions and self-respect go out of them. What is the point of trying to be clean when the next shower of rain will turn the camp into a sea of mud? And the children who are brought up in these conditions know nothing else. They have never been clean or had a bath, never seen any reason to be clean. And yet, in spite of everything, some of the parents try.
Can you manage to keep your children clean?
It is very hard to on the side of the road. Very dusty these places. We'd have a good journey to go for water betimes. And even the faster folk now feel the chance for using, and the kids who often fall in the water and fall in the dirt and places way out inside the road. And then we have no back room or anything to watch them right or look after them. But we do our best for them. We do often have to go a long journey for water maybe. It is very hard to look after kids on the side of the road. We'd be better off if we had a place for them, you know, to have a place which they offer the road and we take care of them better than what we are. We could probably give them education or something like this, you know, we're left in place long enough. Would be shifted along, you know, from place to place. It's very hard on the kids.
They will call us dirty, drunken tinkers.
And isn't it true? Don't you go to
It's not true.
sometimes, even when there's no food for the children?
Well, the reason that we do it is when we're cold and wet, and in the winter time of the year, we have nowhere to go to, or nowhere to stay. We may be pushed away from place to place, and as well to drink is to be dead the following morning. Will you get a bad wetting? You'll be used to it yourself, and when you'd be drunk, you wouldn't feel the wet that night.
Oddly enough, it's the lack of money that sometimes makes them drunk. A man with an empty stomach can get roaring drunk on a couple of bottles of beer. And Tinkers' stomachs are usually empty. A slice of bread for breakfast, a turnip for dinner, day after day. Of course, men who spend the few shillings they have on beer instead of bacon don't deserve much sympathy. But tinkers don't have the training to think in terms of diet and calories and common sense. Only a few quick pleasures. In fact, they haven't much training for anything. But how does a man get training when he's forced to move his home twice a week, or even once a month? It's almost impossible to live any kind of disciplined life, even to keep a steady job. And for a man who can't read and write, it's hard to get any kind of job. Even if jobs he could do were advertised, he'd never see them. And so, the travellers stick to their old trades, even though they know they're doomed. The king of the tinkers still makes tin buckets and sells them. His wife makes paper flowers and sells them when she can. His son-in-law Patrick buys and sells horses along the roads and at country fairs. His son John goes out collecting scrap for sale to dealers, but they're finding things harder every year, and for others not so lucky, there's almost nothing. But if the travellers find it hard to get jobs, their critics say they find it even harder to keep them. We've already seen one reason, the constant moving on. Another, especially for the girls, is the simple impossibility of keeping clean. But basically, it's a total lack of discipline, from childhood up. No regular hours, no disciplined example from their parents. Their critics say it's in their blood. They'll never learn.
That's nonsense. I was working for 7 years in England, and I didn't find it any trouble to get up at 6:30 in the morning. I get up now, though, we're in the wagons, look after horses in the morning. In the future time that comes through, we all have to get out and take up a job, because the trade we have now is going out. Nobody wants tins anymore, or buckets.
That is very true. Because there is plastic buckets, machineries, as such. And I did not teach any of my people how to follow this trade, or they would not take this trade. There is no use. And we are very well able to work and get a job. But when we would get a job, we would not be permit in the site, or no permit place to stay. But if we had a site for the stay in, we are well able for to work.
The key to the whole problem is the permanent site. Somewhere with a hard surface, easily cleaned and drained, with water taps and sewerage. The Commission on Itinerancy of 1963 recommended that rather than attempt to house all the itinerants within a few years, permanent sites should be provided for them all over the country. If there were special schools attached to them, the itinerants would already be on the way to becoming acceptable to the settled community. But, though the government has approved the proposal, local authorities have been slow to act, and so far not one site has been provided. Some people say the travellers won't settle even if they're given the chance, but all the evidence is to the contrary.
There's nothing of the old way today, and we'd like it if we get our children to give them some education.
We want to rear them up right and act like all children.
It was very hard to work. We wouldn't be left any place for to stay, for to work.
We have nowhere to go. We are not left anywhere.
I'd be thankful to be able to get a house to park for to rear my 2 grandchildren.
Even on the road, some of the travellers keep their caravans as well as most of us keep our houses, and better. If these families could be given a chance to stay on a permanent site, educate their children, the problem would be halfway to being solved inside 10 years. But it's a problem that needs a great deal of understanding. Travellers who move onto a permanent site or into houses can be driven back to insecurity by a dozen things beyond their control. This hut belongs to a family which had a real house once, and they still keep their hut as well as any suburban housewife keeps her living room. Mick and Mag Connors gave up their house in England to come back and look after her mother, who has a room in Dublin. The Connors could get a house in England, but not in Ireland. And other travellers who have managed to get houses here have had to leave them because the local council refused to allow them to keep scrap in their gardens or a horse and cart on the road outside. And so, home is a one-room hut for 4 adults and 3 babies. It looks like a home, warm, snug, cosy, but it's built of packing cases and polythene, and the floor is linoleum over the bare mud. And children grow up in this, to raise children of their own. How much does anyone care? Father Feely served on the Commission of Itinerancy and knows the travellers and their problems better than most people. He sympathises without sentimentality and never tries to whitewash their faults.
I am one of the chaplains appointed by the Archbishop of Dublin to help the itinerants, and my main responsibility towards them is to provide adequate opportunities for their reception of the sacraments and to prepare the children, and to help insofar as I can in the provision of elementary education for the children in particular. The problem of itinerants is a small one. There are only 6,000 in all in the country, but it is a serious one because they are human beings and as such count eternally. No matter whether they are dirty or clean, it makes no difference. The fundamental fact is that they are human beings with basic human rights and also duties. The Commission has stated, the Commission on Itinerancy has stated that the only ultimate solution to this problem of itinerancy is their complete integration into the settled community. And this, of course, can only be done when they are properly and fully housed. There are many people who will say, of course, that they are not fit to live in houses. They wouldn't know what to do with a house. We have heard all this before. The same thing was said even here in Dublin and in other parts of Ireland when the problem of slum clearance was first initiated 20 or 30 years ago. They will not, however, successfully settle in houses without a tremendous amount of help and patience and understanding and kindness from the settled community. The present attitude of the settled community leaves a lot to be desired. We regard them very much as second-class citizens. We do not wish to associate with them, nor our children to associate with their children. The all-important problem for the itinerants at the moment is that at least they would be given sites in which to settle. If it's not possible, as it is not at the moment, to give them houses, then we have an obligation towards them to provide sites. It's very difficult to make an exception in the case of the itinerants. We are perfectly conscious of our obligations towards other less fortunate members of our society, and these are members of our society. As they are of our society, they are not Romanis or gypsies imported from abroad. They are our own people. Look at the names and you will see that. And so we have an obligation to help them, a social obligation.
It's set out in the European Convention on Human Rights that no person shall be deprived of the right to education, and that this right shall be secured without discrimination on any grounds such as national or social origin, association with a national minority, birth or status.
That was the voice of Grattan Puxon, the itinerant's most controversial friend. A plain nuisance to the Dublin Corporation, a political agitator, a would-be saint or an interfering fool to others, he is beyond question a dedicated man. His wife Venice shares his dedication. They and their small son live in the squatters' camp, share its hardships, and encourage the squatters to defy all orders to quit.
I've been interested in the travellers for years, but the appalling conditions in which the families live was really brought home to me when 2 families pitched their wretched tents almost on my back door, my house near James Street. I began helping them in the usual way, giving them bread and tea and this kind of thing, but I felt there was still an appalling gap between myself and them, that this wasn't bridging the thing. So I believe that, having been lucky enough to have an education myself, I should go to them and try to describe to them what their rights were, exactly where they stood in the community. and to point out the injustice under which they were suffering. Now, these families were to be evicted, and I managed to stop them being evicted by going to the parish priest of St. James and getting a petition locally. But I found that there were 200 people up at the Ring Road here at Ballyfermot also under threat of eviction. And it's from among those 200 people that this movement has really sprung.
How much good has he done, even for the itinerants here in Cherry Orchard? He's certainly created a wealth of bitterness, not so much with close neighbours as with those who've merely read about the camp or glanced at it from the road. And he's antagonised the Dublin Corporation. But Grattan Puxon believes that even bitterness and hostility are preferable to neglect, that obedience would simply lead to oblivion. He's teaching passive resistance methods to his followers, and what he believes to be their legal rights.
People down the city will get us an alternative site, but we have to think what we're going to do if they come up and try to put us off.
Yes.
Mick, don't you think that the best thing is to keep violence right out of it, since we've got such a bad name for using violence? I think it's awful. But I think we can sit on the ground, link our arms together, you know, and even if they abuse us, don't get up and hit them, because that's what people expect us to do. But
Well,
so
they're very mean, one of the princes, before I goes on the road anymore.
Puxon has made a lot of enemies by his use of the Gandhian weapons of passive resistance and publicity. After the eviction from the Ring Road in November 1963, he helped the travellers to resist the weekly evictions by putting up barricades and staging sit-downs in front of the caravan wheels. But the resulting newspaper publicity did win him horrified sympathy and offers of regular help. The camp has settled down now into a state of siege.
We just got to sing. We just got to sing. You're singing the one I was scared about.
It's a state of almost permanent siege, until they win themselves a home. These methods are standard form in any struggle for social justice, in India, Sicily, in South Africa, or the southern states of America, and they can only work if at some stage the travellers take over the leadership themselves. One of Puxon's helpers sees a clear similarity with the Negro struggle in America. Andrew Leddy came here with experience of the civil rights movement over there.
Yes, I think this is very much like the Negro situation in America. Both of these groups are essentially apathetic and disorganized at the beginning of the movement. To get a movement going amongst them requires outsiders to come in, to sort of give them a push to get them started. These people, both in America and in Ireland, are people without a voice. They have no political rights. They have very few legal rights in practice. They have very little idea of what they can do themselves or of what should be done for them. They have very little idea of how to fully integrate themselves into the community.
We've set up a committee here in ourselves, and I'm the chairman of it. And we've spent a winter here with slush muck, no toilets, no lavatories, no water, no way of washing children. And we had a very bad time here, and we wouldn't like to spend another winter.
You see, we came in from Cherry Orchard Lane because the guards wouldn't let us stop out there. We thought this was corporation land, and then when 5 months later the company came to us, the owners of the land, we said, well, look here, we can give you a pretty good rent between the families here, probably more than you'd get for grazing. They were very agreeable to take rent. Unfortunately, they were barred from doing so by the county council, who put down their foot and said, according to our regulations, you cannot set up a parking ground here by itinerants. So the result is we've been here with no help from the county council. We've applied for a collection weekly, a kind of dustbin collection, but they won't do this either. So the result is the place is an awful mess. And anybody coming past here does get a very bad impression. We know the place is a mess.
Well, I've always been amazed at the efforts these people have made to keep cleanly. They dug sanitation pits here, but unfortunately they didn't work out. The children couldn't use them very well. Then as far as the problem of water goes, after the people arrived here at Cherry Orchard, the county council removed the 2 water taps which were available for public use, thus forcing the people to travel at least a mile or more to get water to wash up with, or else to go around to local houses and to ask for water. I think it's a fallacy to pretend that any people don't wish to be clean. In fact, it's quite pathetic and sad to walk through here any evening and watch the mothers washing their children late at night, trying to keep them clean.
We know we're a nuisance in present circumstances, but the families have got to live somewhere. I can't whitewash the difficulties. One of these is the horses. People get horses in their front gardens around about the area. And of course they have people calling around for water. They have women calling, begging sometimes. But I think these things will very largely vanish when there are organised sites.
Our people here, if they get a proper chance, they will keep their sites clean, and they will show people that they can live in a possible means. On the other side, there is no opportunity. They've never been given a chance to organise themselves. Everybody outcasted them. Everybody turned their eyes on them as they didn't know who they were or what they were. But in the organisation that these people expect to get education for their children, and cleaning facilities, and corporation arrangements, and other things, I think that the people in the country would be far better off if they were given a chance.
They can only get a real chance in life through education, and they know this. Under Grattan Puxon's urging, they have built their own school in Cherry Orchard, and are already extending it. The Legion of Mary is running 2 other schools for them in Dublin, 2 evenings a week. But even so, there's room for only a fraction of the children who need it. And the schools depend entirely on voluntary teachers who come in their free time.
We built the school because every child has the right to an education, whatever his way of life. And these children were being denied this education because of the authorities' policy of evicting itinerants every week or so. And parents were feeling too insecure to attempt to put their children into national schools. Some few who tried were told that there was a waiting list or that they must try at another school some miles away. The result is that the children are now too far behind to fit into national schools anyway. And so our aim is to quickly bring them up to standard and socialise them for entry into national schools when and if sites are established throughout the country for itinerants. The demand for education has been so fantastic that we've hardly been able to cope with it. The children are wonderfully responsive, particularly to Montessori method, which is the progressive Catholic system that we have adopted.
So we're doing Wincy Spider? Yeah.
The problem is not getting the children to come. It's keeping them out. The time must come when no child is ever turned away. These are Irish children. Their need and their right to education, to a place in the new Ireland, a chance to live a full and decent and constructive life, is as great as that of any other child in the length and breadth of the country. We cannot leave these children to live as their parents live, ground down by poverty and desperate ignorance, knowing nothing, hoping for nothing. Centuries ago, their ancestors were done a desperate wrong by foreigners. Let their children at least be done justice now by us.
This is how all the travelling people was evicted out of their little homes, and they had no place to go. To come in the medical camps on the side of the road, and more than got lodgings for the night and take in to the next place again. And they had to carry their bundles. Time we always go to the fair bed in the slow for to see all the old friends and all the old folks that I did not see for a long time. The boys goes to swap and to truck among the travellers and among everyone if they can get them. All the old friends comes and we do all see them there, but there's a good deal of them dead now and gone that I didn't see for years. Come on, Gina. Here, Gina. I was married at 16. My first child was born at 17. She was born in Tullamore, in the old county home in Tullamore. And I stood 3 days there, and I came out, and out to be camping the side of the road. Myself and my baby. And had no money or anything else. We travelled around about then, from place to place, with a nursing care, and my husband is a tinsmith, making gallons. And the times was very bad that time.